Since I've been making a lot of shows about Disney animated series for a variety of reasons, most of which relating to the absence of shows like The Dragon Prince, the Avatar The Last Airbender franchise, and other shows that I once relied on, a lot of people have been wondering if I could make more videos on Star vs. the Forces of Evil, a slightly older Disney animated show that got over a couple years ago, and that people still have a lot of very heated thoughts on. People want to hear my takes. And I've already given a few of my thoughts in that video I made comparing Amphibia with Star vs. the Forces of Evil in terms of how they handled the Portal Fantasy problem of having these two separate worlds that you have to work through. But I do think that I could give a few more of my thoughts about the show, and particularly its controversial ending. In case you all are not familiar with the show, or in case you just need a refresher, here's a quick summary. The show aired from 2015 to 2019, and it was created by showrunner Darren Nefsey, based on concepts she had been working with for a long time. She first tried to pitch a version of this show to Cartoon Network back when she was at Cal Arts, but that didn't really pan out. But after a lot of revision and a lot of other positions she worked on in the industry, she finally got this show greenlit, and it was pretty popular for a while. Star Butterfly, the show's protagonist, is a perky, happy-go-lucky teenage girl who has magical powers, but she comes to Earth, and while on Earth, she meets Marco, a regular human boy, and the two of them fall in love gradually, and they go and team up and fight evil together. Pretty simple. The final episode of the show, Cleaved, ends with the destruction of magic and the merging of the different worlds in this show. This shocking ending left a lot of fans so angry and resentful that they still have hurt feelings about the show to this day. Do I think this is justified? Well, not entirely. But does that mean the ending's good? Well, no, not really. Let me explain. Fans place far too much emphasis in my mind on how a show ends, ignoring what came before. If a show has 6 great seasons but a bad 7th season, people will never watch the show again, even if they really enjoyed those previous seasons, which seems very silly to me. This was especially evident on a mainstream scale when Game of Thrones came out. The last few seasons of the show caused so many fans to start resenting the show they'd poured a lot of time into that they are not willing to go back and watch even the seasons they actually liked because they know how it ends. This is even the perspective taken by a lot of people I otherwise really respect, like Lindsay Ellis. But it's not really a perspective I can agree with. We are a rather teleological society, in that we judge things by how they end, which is honestly a rather depressing way to view the world. Just because the ending did not exactly work out perfectly does not mean those good moments did not happen. That does not make them any less bright and worth going back to and remembering. This is good advice for television shows, but it's also just good advice for life. The Game of Thrones comparison is useful in another way, too. Most of the blame placed on Game of Thrones fell on the last season, and especially the last episode. But that is not really fair, because what happens in that season, and even in that last episode, while not great, is less an aberration and more a continuation of troubling tendencies that had popped up in the show a long time ago, but people were still enjoying the show so much that they didn't pay any attention to these troubling tendencies. But as the show progressed, these tendencies grew more prevalent and became harder to ignore. That is the case for Game of Thrones, which started downsliding all the way back in Season 5, and especially from Season 7 onward. And it's also true in the case of this show. The problem is not one or two terrible decisions, but a couple hundred mediocre and thoughtless decisions that lead to the show losing sight of what made it great in the first place. Though I am not as big a fan of Star versus the Forces of Evil as some people, I was able to get invested in it enough during its first few seasons that I could very much feel my attention slipping as the show progressed into its third and fourth seasons. The constant drawn-out will they or won't they with Star and Marco was overly cutesy and lacking in any real substance. It kind of felt like they did not really know what to do with that relationship. And that feeling that the show just is running out of ideas extends to a lot of other aspects of it. The royal politicking was both underthought and kind of convoluted, and the show was constantly coming up with these new ideas to shake up the status quo without thinking these ideas out, and the result was a show that felt both jerky and rather repetitive. The core dynamics of the show, which had become stale, did not really change, while the more superficial plot elements of the show did change. And I also think it probably was not the best idea for the show to rely so heavily on having a large cast of villains. I don't really see how that served the show. It's different for a show like The Legend of Korra, because that is a show with big philosophical ideas that it's willing to deal with in a thoughtful and nuanced way. And these villains embody these ideas to such an extent that bringing them into contact with Korra creates a really interesting dialectic that forces Korra to reconsider what she really believes about herself and her place in the world, and what the responsibilities of the Avatar are. Star vs. the Forces of Evil, on the other hand, just became rather meandering. Like it was searching for new concepts, but not coming up with something that would actually reinvigorate the malaise that had settled in. Just changing the ending would not fix the show, is what I'm saying. Would changing the ending make the show better? I mean, kind of, but you have to understand that the lack of foresight that led to the ending being so convoluted and bizarre did not come out of nowhere, but was a result of the show losing its way in the seasons leading up to the ending. That does not mean the ending is, good. There are shows like Steven Universe that have controversial endings because what the show prioritizes, in the case of Steven Universe, that being the intimate psychological storytelling that parallels the diamonds to a family trying to heal. That kind of storytelling was a bit at odds with the more broad-scale sociological storytelling that I think a lot of fans kind of wanted. But that was still a show that had an idea of what it was and what it was doing, even if those weren't the decisions some sections of the fan base and some sections of the critical press thought it should make. Star, however, has an ending that I don't think really pleased anyone. Even people who like the ending would probably not say it's one of their favorite endings of any show. Those who like it think it's okay. Those who dislike it really hate it. On a superficial level, the ending should be satisfying. Marco and Star get together, evil loses, happiness and prosperity result, but the ending is neat and tidy. which is dissatisfying in of itself, but it also results in the show being so desperate to tie together all the loose ends that it creates implications that, even if you think about it for a few seconds, are just rather ill thought and just convoluted, inert storytelling. I hate the kinds of complaints that are always like, oh, well, logically, if this person did that, then they would have been better off. I hate those kinds of complaints. Because, number one, they think that all characters should act logically at all times. And two, they often have a very bad idea of what even would be a logical answer, and they often come up with something that obscures a lot of complicating factors that the show explicitly presents as problems. But in this case, the problem is not that the show's not logical enough, or that it's one of those where, oh, if you think about the ending for a little while, it's secretly terrible, like those old cracked articles from 2014. And those who say, oh, Star is committing magical genocide are a little over the top, and I think those people should kind of cool it a bit. But magic is not extraneous to the show. It's a core part of this world and these characters' lives, and if you dispose of it so easily without really digging into the implications of that, yes, people are going to have a problem with it because it is so front and center to the show itself. This is not like some little lapse that doesn't really affect the heart of the show. This is the heart of the show. The get rid of magic idea is not innately bad, but it is one that would have been needed to have a lot more nuance and complexity to it, really looking into the implications of such a decision if it was to be a good idea. And the show Star sadly became in its last couple seasons was never going to be the kind of work that actually asks those interesting questions, sadly. So thank you all for watching. If you liked what you saw today, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Donate to my Patreon if you can and you want to see more videos like this. Please be nice to Darren FC. She may have made an ending that a lot of us don't particularly like, but she's a kind and nerdy introvert, just trying to make a show she's passionate about. She's not some evil overlord, and she doesn't owe you the ending you want. If you disagree with her, be civil, be an adult. Don't harass her endlessly. Don't be spiteful and narcissistic, and then act like it doesn't matter because she's more powerful than you. And she's the one who's created the show. The whole idea that claiming victim status gives you the authority to be a terrible person is something we really need to shut down as a society. But anyway, tune in soon for my next analysis. It will be coming soon. Thank you all again. Adios, comrades.